opportunity to be able to start making money off the entire remote thing. And then people are going to start wanting to be associated. So I think it's going to be cyclical. I don't know whether, the entire university system is going to kind of come crashing down. These things all go in cycles. They ebb and they flow, and people figure out to kind of make a money. But certainly there has been some type of a tipping point that's been crossed where, people are starting to realize that the online path really is useful in both ways.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's yeah, because I have a lot of friends who have done their MBAs, and there's a lot on the line, because you have to hold down your current job. You have to, you're married, you have kids. Like it's a big risk that might not pay off in the end. Fortunately, a bunch of my friends have been more successful after doing an MBA, but I know that it's not the same for everybody. I guess that's more, this is a perfect segue for, getting an MBA, working within businesses, the economy right now, and, how do we stay competitive, and what should, like, maybe more focus on Canada, like what do we need to do to kind of bounce back? Because I know we've seen reports that the economy will be back to pre-March levels in about 18 months. But, some people are saying that we're 2 years out. But on the other hand, we've talked about the information, and, we get snippets of information here and there, what truthfully, like, are we, are we in a good spot right now, or is, we're another thing that is going to come in, like another recession or another economic crisis? What do you see, to stay competitive, and, like, what do we need to do to stay, competitively within Canada and, throughout the world?
Look, short term, here's my prediction. For the short term, we're going to be okay. These things kind of, again, like I said, they ebb and flow. You can talk to any, microeconomist, they'll tell you the same thing, right? That, they'll be optimistic. Bank of Canada is going to have stimulus measures, and we'll be back to our oil economy. But you can't be back to oil economy and run that forever. There are other things eventually that a country should kind of run itself on, right? It should be reasonably able to contribute to some form of an ecosystem where there's production and consumption of goods and services in a value chain, in some type of an economy as such. But again, we have geopolitical constraints here, and we have huge dependencies. You can't do everything on your own, right? One country can't be entirely self-supporting in that sense, right? Be completely isolated. So long term, I worry, right? Because we're such a outsourcing dependent culture in North America as it is, and we're also extremely consumption driven. That's, I think, a mindset issue. And we tend to focus more on things as opposed to the relationships of people, which statistically you could say, okay, this is a very male versus female type of mindset driven, but that's also what is driving our mindset kind of within as consumers in North America. But long term, I'm not optimistic about Canada unless we really change how we do business, which is to say that we need to be more self-reliant and rely on other industries and start bringing them back up to speed in a globally competitive way, right? Like, if I were to ask you, would you tell your son and daughter it's okay to go into the trades, right? Would you encourage your son or daughter to say, okay, if you want to become a general contractor or a master plumber or an electrician, or you want to have your own trade company, would you tell your kids that?
100% yes.
You are in the minority. You are in a significant minority, because we talk about MBAs, we talked about getting these degrees, we talked about everyone is trying to climb this stuff. But I know most of the stuff, any tradesperson who's come and done work in my house, that we've worked at our office, etc. They work crazy hours. Yes, they work very, very hard. But there's also a shrinking number of them, so that they're driving up the rates. Now, who the hell is going to pave driveways? Who's going to come and fix, sinks? Who's going to go and build houses? This is becoming not as sexy a thing to do. And I think this is a great illustration of our, kind of this North American mentality of only going for these white collar jobs at the expense of doing things that are on the ground. And I think no more is it more well and more starkly illustrated than our dependence on the outsourcing economy. We don't manufacture forks or bicycles here in North America as much as we just get them imported in. And we've made that a little bit of a morally hazardous situation, right? Because it just goes to the lowest bidder. And people suffer and they die for some of the things that, for a lot of the things that we consume. You know, we get clothing out of Bangladesh, but I don't know if you've ever seen the conditions under which some of these people, these factories run in Bangladesh. They're abhorrent. We talk about fair trade coffee, but we're not talking about fair trade phones or laptops or, you know, a table or a bottle of water that we look at. But a lot of it is made in this conveniently morally hazardous situation where we've made it someone else's problem and we just kind of turn a blind eye to it. So that, I think, you talked about the Canadian economy kind of rebounding. If we continue to do that, we will put our hands, we'll put our fates in the hands of other countries, which, if they don't have a system that's aligned with our interests in a global sense, in a mutually equitable sense, then there can be a lot of tension, which is exactly where we are geopolitically between the US and between China right now. As much as they say they want to decouple, they can't. And so Canada is also, you were in a much more precarious situation than the US. The US actually has manufacturing, et cetera, capabilities. Here, we don't. We've only got 35 million people. We don't have 350 million. And out of that, the majority of them are not trained, you know, to the extent that we need to be able to bring manufacturing and some of that stuff back in here. So yes, I personally, I would encourage my kids, you know, go into the trades, because not only is it lucrative, it's the right thing to do, and you're going to end up contributing to the economy. And so in that sense, I worry about, you know, Canada or North America as a whole. We've got to have that mind shift to say it's okay to do things that don't require an MBA. It's okay to do things where you don't need a PhD or you're not a banker or a hedge fund manager, because that's not the stuff that's going to make the world go round. And in fact, to do that, if you continue to rely entirely on an outsourced model, will only end up exacerbating, you know, this type of geopolitical tension that we're in right now. I think this is exactly where we've landed up. I mean, I remember I talked about this with an economist about 10 years back. I don't want to kind of take his name, but he's a well-known, you know, gentleman. I remember asking him, I mean, what do you think about this entire, you know, dependency? And he called it out. He said that, you know, 10 years from now, you know, 15 years from now, kind of at the latest, this is going to result in some major problems between import exporting countries, because they're not going to be aligned in the way in which they work. So Canada's got its work cut out for it on a, you know, the 10, 15-year time scale. You know, I'm not worried about recessions because they come and go. You know, everything's kind of cyclical. I'm worried about more of these mind shifts where we end up getting relegated completely down to the bottom over here as kind of an irrelevant nation. That's really kind of a worry.